Hello everybody, it's Violet. Before this video starts, I just want to quickly apologize. Behind me in the entire video, there's like a purple lens flare, like behind me for the entire video. And so I just wanted to apologize that it's there because it obviously is distracting. And I'll make sure in the future videos with Kevin, because the angle I do for my usual solo videos is not this angle that we're doing for this video. I'll make sure that does not happen. So my apologies. Besides that, enjoy the video. Woo. Hello everyone, my name is Violet Chantal, and this is Kevin Falk.
Hello.
I hate this man, but he
Yes.
is here at my house, unfortunately.
Yes.
But it's okay.
Listen, we can't always win with those that are our guests. You know,
That is so true.
you gotta
That's
keep
so
your
true.
enemies closer, and this is exactly what they mean by that.
That's a really, really good point. Yeah, dude, this is the 4th time you're at my house.
I know.
5th time we're meeting up, because
Yeah.
one of the times we went to go to see The Weeknd.
Yes.
I don't know if you guys can tell, but I like The Weeknd quite a bit.
It's really hard to tell. You know?
Yeah, I like him a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know.
But yeah, anyways, so this is the first ever, what am I going to call this? I think I'm going to call it Violet's Film Journal or something.
I like that.
We're going to call it something
That's cool.
fancy like
That's
that. I was going to do like Violet's Film Diary because it's technically
Okay.
a diary. We're going to call it something fancy like a journal.
Yeah, I
you
like
know,
that.
something
I
like
like
that. Welcome. This is the first one we're
Hello.
talking about. As I was watching this film tonight in theaters, I was like, wow, this is really going to be the first film that we talk about.
Yeah.
Because I will say, okay, well, let's actually get into it first. So, would you like to introduce the film we are talking about today?
Yeah, so we're talking about Society of the Snow, Jay Bayona's new film, and yeah, it's going to be on Netflix in a week or so.
January 4th.
Yep.
Do you want to give a little bit of a plot synopsis for this one?
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, how
So,
do you go a little bit?
basically, this film, it's focusing on this rugby team in Uruguay in the 70s. They were going to some kind of championship or something like that, and they ended up in this crazy, just like very violent plane crash to where they are now stuck in this mountain of snow, and basically the rest of the film is them just doing what they can to hopefully try to survive and, you know, try to get out of this situation as best as they can, and just kind of seeing the, you know, just seeing how things continue to kind of escalate from there.
Like I said, this is quite the first film to
I know.
start off Violet's Film Journal, because I want to say right off the bat, I think this film is like really, really good.
Yes.
But the reason why it's interesting is because this is one of those movies, and like, it takes a lot for me. Like, I'm not trying to like brag about it, but it takes a lot for me to like feel this way about a film.
Yeah.
But I am never watching this movie ever again in my life.
It's very much
I
a
am
one
never
and
watching this
done.
movie again in
Yeah.
my life. Like, we were like it was like the middle of like the plane crash scene.
Yeah.
And, like, when it starts to get, like, very graphic,
Mhm.
and I was, like, and knowing, and I won't say anything, but I do know a little bit what happens later on this, because it's based on a true story. It's based on it's based on a novel with the same name. Like, during that sequence, like, again, we'll get into it as, like, least spoilers as possible, but, like, during that sequence, which, by the way, is, like, one thing I'm gonna say about this movie is, like, I feel like they did a really good job at showcasing, like, the terrors of what happened, but also still being, I think, as respectful as they could.
Yeah, it doesn't in any way feel like they are exploiting or sensationalizing what happened. It feels very raw and uncomfortable, but it also very much feels like you are like along for the ride with the survivors and everything.
You know, absolutely. Because, like, after that, like, the movie is 2 hours and 20 minutes long, I believe.
Yeah, it is.
And so...
It flies by. It really does.
It does. And the thing about it, though, is, like, most of it obviously deals with, like, the crash and what happened after that. And, there's more details, but I don't want to get... It is based on, like, a true story, but I don't want to be, like, too spoilery. People don't know it. And I will say, like, I'm not going to, like, ruin anything. And I know you won't either.
No.
But some of the things that happen in this, for me, are, like, massive triggers.
Oh, yeah.
And so, like, I was watching this film, and I was like, wow, like, this movie's really good, but, like, I'm never watching this ever again in my life. But honestly, I think that honestly is more of a testament to just how harrowing the film is, and just how, like, realistic it is, like
Right.
like you know, like they made like replicas of like the crash like plane with like, you know, the front tail and the back, like those are like really accurate and stuff like that, and like you know, the landscape of all, like the outfits and stuff like that. The amount of effort that they put into this for such like a difficult subject matter, because obviously, you know, he made the film of The Impossible, like back, what was it, 2012 or what was it?
And that movie is good, but I think the thing, especially when you watch this movie, there's a huge the way you differentiate is, I feel like The Impossible is a lot more like audience friendly. This one is really like just like raw and kind of gross, and just really makes you just kind of feel like shit after you watch it. Whereas The Impossible, yes, it definitely has like, you know, a lot of tragic moments, but they don't feel nearly as effective as they do here. This just feels so much more like visceral and things like that, and authentic in the way that it's portrayed.
You know, absolutely. And this was a film that he started wanting to develop like around the time The Impossible happened, because you got here the novel that's of the same name, and he got the rights to it right when The Impossible was finished filming. And then and then what was it after that? What was the film before? Was it A Monster Calls?
I think,
And then Fallen Kingdom,
a movie,
So for him to
horrible.
basically go back to his roots, really.
But
also, I feel like in a way he takes like what makes him work is like sort of like an accessible kind of director. You have like some of like the more like grander emotional moments that have like the music and the certain writing and how the dialogue progresses, and like certain scenes where like something casual happening, then all of a sudden something comes out of nowhere, for example. So he has those sensibilities that like make like a big like sort of like accessible sort of film, but he also strips it back to like a bare bones sort of sense, and also a sense of just pure horror and terror. And the thing too is like the film, I think, so brilliantly captures this feeling, because it's hard to capture. Obviously this is a hard film to make, but one thing I really admire about it is the film has to capture so like closely like the desperate nature of what the characters are going through. But the film takes its time getting to those points, which I think is really impressive, because there is like a lot of story to cover here. Because there's a ton of characters, and the thing too about the film is like it kind of jumps into it pretty quickly, the story.
And that was an issue for me at first. I was like, oh, we're really just kind of rushing into this, but it really ended up paying off, I think, by the end.
That's the thing though, is like, what else are they supposed to do though? You know what I mean?
I don't know, kind of show their lives, like,
but the thing is, like, I don't even think that's like necessary to me. Like, this is obviously like a, you know, probably like not like the greatest comparison, but when I think about a film like Christopher Nolan's Dunkirk, I love that film just because it's so much about like the feeling and the visceralness and just like the sadness of the movie, and the characters sort of like are encompassing that feeling, like they're like the feeling of everything. This film I feel a little bit similar to, but also this film is a lot more like
character heavy,
interpersonal, and nothing against Dunkirk, but this movie is like,
Dunkirk's about like the event. This one is much more, you know, folks. There's a lot more characters.
It's more of like a balance of both, because the thing is like you have like personal like character moments or things like about like revealed characters and like vulnerabilities, but the thing is like the whole movie is about vulnerabilities. Like that's what I'm going to the Dunkirk. Dunkirk's about like characters being in vulnerable situations. This is similar, but this one is like to a level where like it's so much more just like meditative, I think is a good way to put it. But again, to get back to the point I was making, like he has to capture such like a desperate sort of like moving forward constantly nature, but it actually takes its time, and it's paced and edited so well. It's 2 hours and 20 minutes. And I honestly, like, I really thought about it. Like, I wouldn't remove anything from this movie.
No.
I wouldn't have. And
I think it's all necessary.
That's the thing. Like, I can't even think, it's really, like when movies, like, sometimes movies like this, like, it's so rare for me to feel this way, but, like, I don't think it should have been any longer, any shorter. I think it's, like, the perfect runtime.
I agree.
I was really, really impressed with that. But again, just to say it quickly, and I'm sure people who are going into this movie are aware of this, but one thing I do have to say, as somebody who, some of the things that happened in this movie triggered me, I'm very sensitive to. This movie is graphic, and it has some very, very, like, intense moments, and the thing about it too is I think a big part of why that, like, again, no specifics, but part of why I think it's part of that is the sound design.
Oh, yeah.
Because we saw this in theaters.
Which, if you can, you definitely should.
Yeah, I don't know how many theaters are even showing this in theaters, unfortunately. The sound design was so, like, because the thing about it is, like, when you have these, like, intense moments, the sound design becomes, like, very, very, like, obviously
horrific,
it's like,
yeah.
no, it's like a surround sound, like, experience, but it becomes sort of like a mono channel experience, where it becomes so, like, in your face, and, like, the detail is coming from, like, one specific, like, sound channel. And the thing, too, is, like, there's so many, like, moments, specifically one moment, that I will not say what it is, but it's the scene that you were most disturbed by in the movie.
Oh, yeah.
Where there's just a bunch of, like, crunching sort of noise. And and the thing is, like, you don't really know fully what's happening, and so there's just these really, really, like, unknown sounds, because they can mean, like, different things, and, like, hearing it come together, like, so, like, detailed and precise with the sound mixing is, like, crazy. I don't know if this film's gonna have a Dolby Atmos mix on Netflix. We did not see some Dolby Atmos, but if it does, like, it's probably going to be, like, even more, like, you know, hard to watch at points. Now, the sound design for this movie is really good, and one thing I also want to say about the sound to the film is the score.
Oh, yeah.
By Michael Giacchino. I didn't even know that was him, because the whole time I was watching it, it's a very, like, subtle score, because a lot of times it's, like, just sort of, like, atmospheric, and then it has, like one, like, guitar chord kind of strum thing, and it progressively changes, like, key throughout it and stuff like that, and
it really, like, crescendos, like, at the end.
Yes, absolutely, especially in the credits.
Yeah,
it's gorgeous.
The score at the end. Oh,
yeah, I'm gonna have to go on Apple.
So good.
I'm just going to Apple Music and see if that's already on streaming, because it was gorgeous. Like, the sound, like, really, really created the atmosphere of the film super well, and obviously, like, visually, this movie,
oh my god,
is incredible. Like, the only mild spoilers I give about the plane crash scenes, that's the only spoilers I'll really give, is
it's
like
very graphic.
Yes, that, but, like, the thing about it that, in terms of, like, visually, is, like, cinematography wise, is there's, like, a shot where, like, it's, like, really starting, and it's, like, a zoom in of, like, a character's face, and it zooms out of the window of the whole plane.
That was great.
Right before it happens. And one shot that really, really got to me was, I think it was after the crash had ended, because they were on this, like, you know, like, snowy place. I forgot the name of exactly what it was. My apologies, but like, the crash has basically just ended, and so, like, the window was all white. And so, you know, like, I had to call it a cliche, but, like, the cliche of, like, you know, like, no, like, this is, like, the weirdest comparison. But, like, remember, like, in Terrifier 2?
Always gotta bring it back to that.
During the alley scene where, like, he, like, slashes her, and, like, the blood goes on, like, the white flowers and stuff like that. So, like, the contrast of, like, even, like, Twin Peaks Fire Walk, maybe they do this, for example. Such inappropriate comparisons. But, like, they do, like, the thing of, like, blood on a white thing, so the window's all white, and a character takes their hand, and, like, the blood smears over it. And, like, I'm not trying to, like, romanticize it, because it was fucked up, but I was like, that's brilliant. Because, like, they're taking the surroundings and, like, putting these, like, really, really, like, well-known, like, graphic, like, sensibilities into it, but it's, like, it's still so, like, poignant and, like, powerful.
And that scene in particular, I think the thing that stuck out about it to me, and one of the reasons this is, like, leagues above of most, like, survival films, is because a lot of the time, like, when they show a crash like that, like, you know everything that's happened, you've already seen the graphic details and things like that. This one, they really take their time in showing, like, what actually happened. Like, you know a crash has happened, but you don't really know the severity of it until that shot happens, and it makes it so much more effective in that way.
I agree, and the thing, too, about it is, I know I already made this point, but it's really, like, it's as tasteful as it can be.
Yeah.
I will say there's one aspect of the movie that is a major part of it. And again, I'm not going to say it, but, you know, for me, it's like a pretty big trigger.
Yeah.
The thing about it, though, that I will say is that slowly throughout it goes, it gets a little more graphic as it goes. But honestly, I feel like it wasn't too much, though. Like, for me, I was like, I don't want to see that. Like, just in terms of, like, a sensitivity kind of thing. Like, I love film and I love being challenged, but, like, there's some things in film that I'm like, I'm okay. I feel like it did it in, like, the most tastefully it could be, while still being, like, pretty, like, just showing just how, like, overwhelmingly sad and just, like, pushing to the limits it was for the characters. And one thing I want to say, because we're talking about, like, the magnitude of the film and, like, the atmosphere, and, like, the depravity of it, but one thing I gotta say is, like, this movie really hones down, of course, because, like, you know, you're in these horrific situations, but, like, with the characters. Because the thing is, like, again, like, you know, there's a lot of characters, like, only a few get, like, very, very specific, fleshing out, especially, like, the narration, for example, which is brilliant. It's some of the best. It's genuinely, I'm not going to elaborate on this at all. The narration in this movie is some of the best narration I've ever seen in the movie. Ever seen in a movie. Like, I genuinely mean that. It was really, really, like, I hate to say this word, but it was really clever.
It's one of those movies where if you take the narration away, it just doesn't hit the same.
No,
like, a lot of the time, And I hear this complaint a lot in movies. It's like, why do we need all this narration? They're over explaining everything. No, the narration in this movie is very essential to what's going on. It's very purposeful, and especially with where it ends up going, like it would not have had the same impact if we did not have the narration. So it's phenomenal.
It kind of reminded me in a sense of one of my very, very, very well, a lot of what films are like. I love a lot of films that, and this one's on my alley because that I love a lot of films that just sort of like present their. I think that's what I was trying to say about Dunkirk in this movie. I love a lot of films that just present their ideas and then flesh it out through like just like more like subtle ways, like atmosphere and just like saying dialogue and just like you're interpreting it yourself. And when a film that I think just in terms of like the narration that is really similar is, I know I haven't seen this movie, but one of my favorite films of all time, like top 5 favorite movies, is Baltar's Satan Tango. And that movie has like select moments where it's like writing, it's like this sort of like very, very like sad and like very like hopeless way of looking at like your humanity and your vulnerability and your mortality and stuff like that. And this movie does the same thing. And so I love films that, as much as like it's impactful and disturbing, is that it's just presenting these ideas in such like a blunt, direct way. And so when you combine that with like the overwhelming like magnitude of like what's happening and the characters, and because the characters in this movie have to make some tough choices, obviously. And again, this is based on a real life story. And the thing too is the director. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Can you say it for me quickly?
Oh, J.A. Bayona.
Yeah, I feel so bad. I don't want to butcher anyone's pronunciation.
No, you're good.
But he and other people did a bunch of interviews with like the remaining survivors of this, and the actors were able to get access to talk to the survivors and the families. And so they,
and you can tell there's a lot of respect paid to, especially like the way the movie wraps up. Like it very much is trying to like pay respect.
And the thing too is he showed the movie to all the remaining survivors. One of them did pass away a few months ago in July, but he showed it to all the survivors like a month or two before they even premiered at Venice. And so he really got their like seal of approval and stuff like that. And so I just feel like just with like the way that the movie approaches its emotion for me was especially like impactful, because this movie's going to disturb everybody. Like if it's just that like for me
it's a tough watch. Like it's very much like, know what you're going into. This is not a Hollywood movie. Like in any way, shape, or form, it is a very tough watch.
I just feel like in terms of like its emotional, like artistic sensibilities, like for me personally, it really, really worked. One thing I gotta say too, is because we should mention it, the acting in this movie.
Oh yeah.
It's mostly like newcomers and unknown people.
And one of them's literally like an actual like rugby player, which I think is really cool. They really took their time in finding the right people for these roles, and they didn't try to, typecast anyone. They didn't try to focus on star power, and it actually makes the movie that much more effective because you don't know these people. So there's no one where it's like, okay, well, I know this person's in the movie, so they're probably going to have a larger role than others. No, it's all like, actors that you haven't seen before, and that makes it so much more effective in that way. I think if this film had regular Hollywood actors, I think it'd be distracting. And I think the fact that like they didn't makes it more effective.
The thing too about it, besides the fact that like they're newcomers, that's impressive, is just ignoring that, most of the characters in this movie, obviously, because they're so like exhausted and they're just so numb, and they're just at a point where even if they're facing like such like intense like dilemmas, that the way that they process them are just hopeless. The way that the actors capture that while still having such a grand sense of like emotionalness and like just like the thing is, like, a lot of this movie is based on like, my favorite form of acting is facial acting, like like facial moves, stuff like that. This movie is the one that really hones in on that.
For sure.
And I feel like that is such an amazing job, because like, again, like obviously the newcomer thing is obviously impressive in itself, but just with any actor, these roles are really, really hard to do.
Yeah, they are.
Especially because like the shoot for this movie, I think, was over like 100 days long.
Holy shit!
Yeah,
that's not something I knew.
Yeah, no, and the environments they were filming it in, like Chile, like all this stuff, like it was like just like. I can't believe just like how all the craftsmanship and all just like the passion and just the care for this all came together in such like a brilliant way. I gotta say, like obviously they released like a multitude of movies, but I really gotta give it to Netflix. Like obviously this is like in terms of like international films, like this is one of the biggest ones of the year. But like the fact that like Netflix is putting this out, I think is like commendable, just because it is different than a lot of the films they release, I feel like. And
this does not feel like a Netflix film at all. Like there's certain, especially recently, there's been a lot of movies they released where it's like, oh, that feels like a Netflix movie. This very much does not. Like this feels like a director's vision. He's telling the story he wanted to tell, and I feel like having Netflix, you know, I don't think he would have been able to. I think if you do this as like a studio film, like he would not have been able to make the movie that he wanted to. So kudos to Netflix for letting him do that.
The thing about Netflix too is they
let him cook.
They just really let like the feeling of it just happen and respect it, because I know this probably happens in other Netflix films. Like the Netflix logo and all the logos are completely silent.
Yeah,
they're completely silent, and so like the film just really starts off with just like that like really just like this atmosphere of like, it's sort of like like kind of like a sub-bass feeling like in music. Like there's just like this sort of like underlying just like sense of like doom or like heaviness that's like right from the beginning. And so I just got to give it to them. And you know, unfortunately it's not in a lot of theaters now, but it's on Netflix on January 4th. I'm really glad we got to see it in theaters just because it really amplified just so like all the emotions that we went for as viewers in this film. Again, I'm not trying to romanticize any of it, because this movie, I'm never watching this movie again. It's just too much. But like, still, like, it is such a well-made film. And one thing I also got to say too, just one more thing I got to touch upon is the special effects in this movie, the visual effects, like the makeup and stuff like that. I was doing Wikipedia. It's from the same people that did all the makeup stuff for Pan's Labyrinth. And I saw that it's on the short list for Oscar nominations. I don't really care too much about the Oscars, but still, like, there's a reason it's on that short list. Like, you know, some of the stuff that they had to do makeup for in this movie is not easy to do. You know, it's pretty sad also, but they did such a really good job, because that's the thing, like with like the replicas of things and like the environments and the makeup and the acting, like it feels so real. You know, it feels so real, and things too that would come across a bit, I guess, like more like theatrical or like more like effects heavy or even too gruesome. They kind of hold back on it also, and
it's
so
that much better that it doesn't look effects heavy. Like it looks very authentic and realistic in that way, especially as the film goes on. Like you don't even notice it. Like you're so locked into what's going on and you're so wrapped up in everything. Like they do such a great job with that. And those are the best kind of effects, like the things that are seamless, and that's exactly the case with this. And
one thing too that I have to say is also, one thing I will say, I'm not going to read any of it, but the ending of the movie, I think is like
rips your heart out.
I think it's the best part of the whole movie, because it is so brutally honest about like again, I'm not going to say anything, but like it just covers just like the way it addresses trauma, and also just like
just the aftermath,
the feeling of like just like, I don't know how to describe it, but it's like regret and it's like depression, but it's on a level that you can't even like describe. But I feel like if we said anything else, we'd be getting too much into spoilers. But I do want to say, I would, if people are able to handle the content of me, again, it's really heavy, I recommend it. It's a very good film. That has some incredible craftsmanship and amazing acting, and this is a very hard movie to make, and they did a really good job at it. It is long, but it's like literally like perfectly paced, and I don't think they could have added anything or like removed anything. Like it's just it's so like tightly cut and put together well. Again, it's something I'm never gonna watch again. Again, I think that's actually a testament to just how powerful and like real this movie feels. It's about a true story, but just like capturing like the realism of it is hard to do, and they did a perfect job of doing that.
And again, hats off to Netflix for letting J.A. Bayona make the movie that he wanted to, because I feel like especially that level of discomfort, brutality that you're talking about, that makes it so hard to watch it again. I think the only other thing that I was going to say that like really impressed me with this movie is that, and I will be honest, for a while the characters, I wasn't super wrapped up in them, but as the movie goes on, we get some really hard-hitting monologues, and a lot of the things that they address I thought were just really well handled, because like these are the topics that are addressed in this movie we've seen done before, but they're done in a way that just feels so much more intimate, and it feels so, and it's because you're along with them for the entire ride. Like, you know what they're going through, you've seen them go through all these hard-hitting situations, and you know, as things start to pile on and things just start to kind of worsen for them, I mean, you really just see how much their mood starts to shift throughout the movie, and it becomes very hard to watch. But again, you also end up really, you know, caring about the characters that much more, and your investment to them, I think, heightens so much more because of those monologues, and those end up being some of the best moments in the entire movie for me.
I agree. I hinted that earlier. I'm really glad you brought that up specifically. And so I think with that, we'll leave it here. I don't give grades, but what would you give this movie?
I'd give it an A minus. I think really my only I could maybe, you know, give me a few hours, I could maybe have it edge up to an A, but right now, like, there's just a couple things that, you know, like I said, in terms of characters and things like that, that might potentially bring it down. But overall, I mean, it's a phenomenal film. I'm very happy that we were able to see it in theaters. I highly recommend, if you're able to, like we said, it's probably unlikely because it's really not in many theaters right now, but if you're able to, definitely try to seek it out, especially in terms of what it's able to do visually, what it's able to get out of you emotionally. I mean, there's a lot of survival films out there, but not many of them leave the impact on you that this one does, and it just really impresses me when they're able to do that. So many times I see movies like this and it ends up being so incredibly predictable and just generic, and I would not use those words to describe this movie at all. It is doing something very different, and I am very happy that it was able to accomplish what it did in the way that it did. Yeah, it's a phenomenal film. Definitely check it out if you can.
I agree. Alrighty, and with that concludes my first ever Violet's Film Journal
This was
video.
fun. This was
I
fun.
am so glad you're here for this because I have not done something like this in a really long time. Talking about movies, and so I'm learning a lot from you and how to like just talk about my thoughts on movies.
I mean, I've been kind of weird with movie reviews too this year.
Yeah,
so,
no, but you've done them way. You've done them so much more than I have for the last 2 years, and so bear with me on this journey of this messy little film journey.
You're doing great. You're doing great.
I thank you. And so we will see you guys again soon for other review stuff. We're seeing a lot of movies together. I don't know if we're going to talk about every single thing we're seeing together, just because that's a lot of movies.
No, we'll see.
We'll see. But there will be some coming out. I mean, the only one that I will say we are going to 100% do is The Color Purple. Yeah. Because we're both like, we need to see that movie as soon as possible. Like, we really need to. Yeah, no. And so that's that. Thank y'all for watching, and I will see you all later. Alrighty, bye.
Bye, guys.